Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week,
Jools was the most amazing, always smiling, happy boy. Very smart, very bright.
Quite clearly from what you found, that presumed responsibility doesn't seem to exist at all within that digital space.
Jools isn't here. He was a minor and I'm his parent. Surely I should have the right to be able to see what he was looking at.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday. The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome to Mental Health Monday. A pleasure to have you with us once again. Thank you for your streams and your downloads. If you want to subscribe to Mental Health Monday, please do so wherever you get your podcasts. We obviously have new episodes every single Monday. This one, though, coming out on a Tuesday because we've just had the end of May bank holiday 2024. I've got a really important conversation with someone who needs your help, actually, on this week's programme, and it's Ellen Roome is our guest. Ellen's son Jools died in 2022. He was aged just 14, and Ellen has got some real unanswered questions about why he died. Now, at the inquest of his death, a coroner refused to rule that it was suicide based on the fact that there was no clear sign that Jools was in a suicidal mood before he died. Now, what Ellen is hoping to do is to piece together as much as she can about his mindset at the time, the people he was interacting with, and the things that he was looking at. Now, obviously, in real life, she's been able to have those conversations with friends, family members, and so on and so forth. But what she's not been able to do is to go to social media accounts that Jools was on and find out what things he was looking at that time. Were there things that were potentially harmful? You do hear about challenges that people are encouraged to take part on. You do hear about people who sinisterly target young people and encourage them to take risks. Ellen doesn't have that information because currently she can't get access to the data that the tech companies are holding about her son. She can't do so without a court order. So what she's doing is she's launching a petition to basically get it debated in Parliament so that tech companies have to provide a parent with information about their child's social media account, particularly when it's something that might be harmful or that their child might potentially be at risk. You think back to, your school days. If something happened at school, your parents would get a call, wouldn't they? If something happened in your local football team when you were playing junior football or in the scouts and you were involved in an event or something happened that you were at risk, your parents would get a phone call to say, hey, guess what? Your child's been involved in this. It's probably worth having a conversation with them. You would have that information. The thing that Ellen's pointing out is that she doesn't have that information, that the tech companies potentially do have that information, but aren't willing to share it. She wants to change that through the petition. The petition link is in the podcast notes. You can go there and support that. We'll hear the conversation in full as well about why Ellen is in this position in the first place. I have approached the tech companies in question for comment. If I hear anything back from them, I'll add it to the podcast and you'll hear it at the end. As I record this, I've not had a response from them. Let's hear the conversation from Ellen. And yeah, fingers crossed, she can get the answers that she's looking for. She started off by telling me about her son, Jools.
Always gets me when people say that, so I have to hold it together. So Jools was the most amazing, always smiling, happy boy, and full of life, adventurous, very smart, very bright. Always wonder how he would have done his GCSEs. He probably would have sailed through without doing any work. But I guess he was reckless. He was the first to, climb something. He'd always be the one at the top of the tree. But yeah, a lovely boy with a lovely nature.
To go through what you've gone through must be absolutely devastating. And to lose him at the age of 14 and through suicide, must have just been the most devastating moment.
I should add there, the coroner didn't rule it was suicide because they couldn't prove he was in a suicidal mood. So as a parent, I'm left not knowing. Obviously, there was nobody else involved, but they didn't technically put it down as suicide. So they couldn't prove he was in a suicidal mood. So as a parent, I'm left actually with no idea why one day my child did something rather reckless and is no longer here.
Yeah, forgive me for the use of language there.
It's not that. It's just that other people have corrected me with that before and said, well, it wasn't suicide. Well, in my eyes, it was. There was nobody else involved, and he took those actions, but they didn't technically rule as that. Yeah.
As a parent, how do you even sort of survive those sort of days? What were those? What was just literally the getting through each day? What was that like?
I think actually for a long time I was in denial, and I think sometimes I still sort of almost do that. So I split from his dad when he was 3, but we were always best of friends. So we had Christmas together, we did birthdays together, and it was always really amicable. And for a long time, I sort of pretended, and I know my ex-husband, Jules' dad, did the same, almost pretending that Jules was at Matt's house. A lot of it is denial for a long time. And I think you put one foot in front of the other, you're not really functioning. You're going through motions, but I'm no longer the Ellen I was. So it's difficult.
When we talk about, and you mentioned there, the sort of the unanswered questions, at what point, was it straight away, did you suddenly think, hang on a minute, I need to know this, I need to know this, or was it as you moved through that period of time, with the grieving process as it comes, there must have been things that flagged with you thinking, hang on a minute, I should have had more information about that. What was that like in terms of those questions building, if you like?
Well, I mean, I've never dealt with anything like this before, so I didn't really know the process. So the police took his devices and they do an inquest, and we were waiting for answers in the hope that we'd understand. My first thought, initially, I rang his good friend and said, what's he taken? What's he done? What were you doing? And he'd been with friends all day that day. And his toxicology report came back absolutely clear. There were no drugs, no alcohol in the system. But my first thought was he must have taken something that made him do something very strange. And you wait on the police investigation. The police couldn't get into Jools' devices initially. At the time he died that evening, I said to the detective, take Jools' phone and set a pin so he can get into it, use facial recognition while Jools' body was still here. And they refused. They said, no, we're not tampering with it. So they then couldn't get into the phone. And then I understand it. They hooked the phone up to a forensics computer. I'm based in Gloucestershire, so it was at Gloucestershire. Now, that computer was down, so the detective had to look through it manually. And, for starters, I didn't even know. I didn't use TikTok. I certainly wasn't aware of how Snapchat worked and things like that. So I just don't feel that his devices were looked at. And at the time, you're going through these motions, you're listening to what the police are telling you, but you're not really processing it. And also, if somebody had said to me now, at the time when they said, we don't know why he did what he did, and we went, okay, and accepted it, because you're just not thinking straight. And it wasn't until afterwards I went, no, that's not good enough with me. That's not good enough. I can't spend the rest of my life not knowing why my son is no longer here without trying that we look at those devices properly. And I have since met other parents who've lost their children, and I didn't know, like the videos that when we got his phone back, I was scrolling through his phone like desperate for some sort of answer. And some of the videos, for example, on TikTok that looked like gaming videos. So Jools was massively into gaming, and he would play Minecraft a lot. Now, a lot of those Minecraft videos, I only found out 2 weeks ago that the Minecrafting videos, there's quite a lot of them online where there's people encouraging children to do dangerous challenges. I didn't look at any of those videos because I just stupidly thought they were gaming things and it was how to build something in Minecraft. And so they weren't looked at. There were also videos on his TikTok that had been removed by TikTok, and I want to know what they were. And TikTok just outrightly have refused and said, without a court order, I'm not entitled to have his data. So I paid privately for a forensics company to look at his devices. I now know that the scrolling or the browsing history is only stored for 90 days on our end that we can download. And so therefore I don't know what he was looking at. And I've been contacted by a ex-employee from TikTok who said they store all of that data, they will have it. Now, I think as a parent, I should have the right to be able to see it. And I don't know if it was a challenge, but to just accept, I don't know why he's here. I can't deal with that. He was my son. There There's no logical explanation for him to do what he did. And I'm just looking for answers.
Many people say to me when we talk about young people these days, and it's a very, very different generation digitally than generations who've gone before, that actually there is the normal life and then there's the digital life, and the two almost sort of run hand in hand. I guess from your point of view, you've sort of exhausted the questions in the sort of real life. And I guess that then throws to that digital life to say, well, what was going on in that space? Have you been surprised how difficult it's been to get those sorts of answers? Given that these are big international global companies, yeah, and everyone's got all these things all over their phones every single day.
Correct. And if Jools was alive and I knew how dangerous it was now, I don't think I'd let him have TikTok. I don't know. It's very difficult because all their friends have got it and things, but there should be some sort of protection over, what children can see. And at the moment, I now know they can see all sorts of things. And the statistics of young children and what they're watching as well is frightening. Frightening that somebody made a very good point. You can't list something on eBay and put a phone number in because it takes it down straight away. Or I was giving away some crutches on Facebook Marketplace the other day and thought somebody could maybe use them. And it instantly removed it and said, you're not allowed to sell medical equipment or whatever. I was giving it away, but it instantly removed it. And that's giving away a pair of crutches is removed. Whereas there are some graphic, hideous things online that I don't want to see as an adult, and I certainly wouldn't want children seeing it. So I'm on a bit of a mission to change that. I don't think it's right.
Is it your fear then that Jools was targeted by some kind of voice or person or whatever algorithm online, which encouraged him into a world through which ultimately cost him his life?
That's my gut feeling. So the police ruled, they looked at, the police were actually very good with the school, and the school were incredibly helpful. And he wasn't bullied at school. There must have been about 500 people at his funeral. He was a really popular child with lots of other people. So I don't understand if he's not bullied. He wasn't struggling at school. He was smart. Yes, he'd get the odd detention for playing football when he shouldn't be or something. But, he was, a good kid. And so my gut feeling is that something must have influenced him. Or where did he get that idea to do what he did? I just got to look for answers.
In terms of that, you set up a petition that's calling for this, and sometimes people set up petitions which are quite specific to specific circumstances, but yours is actually much more general, isn't it, for parents in general to get access and the right to access social media accounts of their children, and it says whether they are alive or whether or not they are deceased as well. You obviously feel strongly that link, if you like, between a child, the digital world, and the parent needs to be a much stronger trilogy, if you like, rather than the child and the digital world sort of walking off into the distance.
So I obviously can't save Jools. I can't do anything about it. And I might never get answers, but what it has opened my eyes is, as a parent, I expected I should be able to see that information. And I can't remember if it was the Ofcom lady or Secretary of State said that, we've got to protect perpetrators that might be on there. Well, Jools isn't here. Why can't I see his data? He's, surely, if there's nothing to hide, if I was the owner of TikTok, I'd be saying, have the data, try and get some answers. Because I don't understand why they'd hide it. Why can't I see it? And I don't even understand what law is protecting them. Jools isn't here. He was a minor, and I'm his parent. Surely I should have the right to be able to see what he was looking at. And then in turn, for children that are alive, gosh, I'd be wanting to know what they're looking at. I really would want to know what they're looking at to make sure they're safe. And you can't. And that shocked me. That really shocked me. I wasn't aware that you couldn't.
If I was to draw a comparison between digital world and real life, if Jools had been watching something or been doing something within a school environment which had been deemed to be unsafe or that potentially could have put him at risk, the school would 100% have contacted you and said, we need to speak about this incident or this risk that he might have been put at. I think most parents would see that and expect that to be very much the norm, quite clearly from what you found, that presumed sort of responsibility, if you like, doesn't seem to exist at all within that digital space.
And I think there's an awful lot there which I've learned as well with Snapchat. Jules wasn't bullied, but I do know of other children that have been bullied. And, you know, I think sometimes, you know, how can you have a program that doesn't store messages? So you send a message on Snapchat and it disappears. So that's opening up a massive world for children that are bullied. If that was actually potentially copied to a parent's phone, that person bullying might just think, maybe I shouldn't send that, so-and-so's mum might see it. And I think there's quite a simple thing there to solve bullying. And I get that children want their own privacy and things, but I don't know. There's got to be something or some way that we can try and protect our children a bit more. And I'm not technical in that sense. I just think it's wrong right now that as parents, you know, for either living or in my case, Jules, you know, is not here, I can't see his data. I think that's entirely wrong.
Does it feel to you, and I know you've spent a lot of time with parents who've sort of had their own run-ins with social media companies, and when I say run-ins, I mean they've had various different interactions that have been based around harms to their own loved ones. Does it feel, and I think to a certain extent it feels in the much wider sense, when anyone's ever tried to report something online or try and take, it feels a little bit like it's the Wild West out there. And while the government speaks of online harm and bills that they've got going through and protecting young people, it still feels very much like there is this sort of digital world which kind of just explodes, and you've almost got to sort of sink or swim in that space, because it all seems to be moving so quickly. Different apps are coming on board. People are finding different ways to exploit people in that space as well. And it kind of feels as if all the structures which exist in real life, they almost don't seem to exist, do they, in that digital space?
No, they really don't. And I think there's a large call to ban smartphones for children. And I can see that they don't need, particularly when they're younger, they do not need a smartphone. You're not going to stop a child accessing the internet. So I said to somebody, how many parents, particularly in lockdown, left their children for hours thinking they were doing schoolwork on a computer? And we all tried to cope. Well, I don't know what he was looking at all day long. And so you might be able to ban a smartphone, but those sites are there on the internet. So you have to do something about the social media side of things in children, not just ban phones, because they've all pretty much got computers. So, you know, you've got to do something bigger than that. And it has to come from tech companies who provide the software to make a difference. And I was watching an interesting debate the other day. Apparently the people that are at the top of these giant tech companies won't let their children use it. And that tells you quite a lot, doesn't it? If they know the algorithms and, you know, what effect and harmful things are on there, you know, we've got to protect children more.
If you have obviously approached TikTok, and you know, and I think if anyone said, you know, a parent goes to TikTok and said, my child is no longer with us, he has been watching things on your platform, I want to know whether or not the things that he saw are a contributing factor to the reason why he's not here anymore, that people would hope that the response would be a warm one, and the people would be very empathetic towards your situation, maybe take the action. What was the response? What sort of response have you had from TikTok? Have they sort of been open to that conversation?
No, I got an email back saying without a court order, you don't have the right to see it, basically. And so the only way I can do that is there's a new law that was passed on the 1st of April, which gives the coroner the right to demand that information under a court order. Because they closed Jools' inquest before that new law came out, I'm having to go back to ask them to reopen the inquest to then get a court order to demand that information. So isn't that ridiculous? My child's not here. I want to see what he's watching, and I need a court order from the High Court. It has to go to the High Court to be able to get that information. I wholeheartedly think that is wrong. And my petition has got, I think it was up to 6,200 signatures this morning, and there's an awful lot of parents that are shocked by that. Most parents think that they would have the right to see it. Well,
yeah,
they don't.
Indeed, and 7 people have signed the petition. Well, we've literally been having this conversation. I've got the ticker in regard to that. You mentioned the court order there as well, and I think as well when people look at this much wider issue, that again to have to be talking about a coroner's sort of interaction in this world speaks, doesn't it, to the fact that people wait until something terrible has happened before action is required, as opposed to a parent who is maybe showing signs of concern about maybe how their child is eating, or showing signs of concern about their child's depressive mood, maybe, or lack of sleep, or whatever it is, and that they could then go, well, let's have a look at the social media, see if there are any themes that are emerging. It strikes me again that the so-called safety net, or the systems that are in place, are set at a level where it's already too late, where we've already potentially lost,
Correct.
a young person, versus being able to be proactive as a parent, exactly right, to go, I want to know because I want to make a difference. I want to help my child.
Correct. I couldn't agree more, which is where it surprised me even more that, yes, we've brought in this new law that the coroner can get access. So what, we've got to wait for a child to die before we can check that they're okay? And that's ridiculous. And I've got a good friend's daughter who is self-harming. When the mum looked at the phone, the algorithms of all these images that just constantly send her self-harming things, it's awful. And as a parent, yeah, you want to protect them. And absolutely, if Jools was alive now, I would be looking through all of it and thinking, what are you watching? Because we just don't know. And the more I've looked into this, the more I've realised how awful some stuff is on there. That and I said, as an adult, I don't want to see that. I don't want my child seeing it. I looked at Jools' phone the other day, because I don't do TikTok, but I looked at it. I've looked at it so many times in the hope that somehow it's suddenly going to give me answers. And there was a image with children sitting on a train line. And I was thinking, oh my God, I don't even want to know what comes next. And I turned the phone off. I just thought, why have we got that on social media? Why do people want to see it? And certainly, as a parent, I don't want children seeing that sort of stuff. It's just, there's no need. There's no need.
What would Jools say about what his mum's up to now, do you think?
He'd probably be whinging that I've put his photo up somewhere. Oh, I don't like that, Mum, don't use that one. But I think he'd be proud. I think... I've always been very tenacious to try and do something. I am really determined to do this. But I have seen a response from 10,000 signatures. You get a response from Parliament. I've seen one of those for a different charity, which basically said, thanks very much for trying. I thought, I have to get to 100,000. I have to get to 100,000 signatures. So this is debated in Parliament properly, and we are looking to protect our children. And I am driven. I'd like it done today. I'm not very good at waiting. I'm a bit disheartened that we're a week down the line, we've got 6,200 signatures. I need that to be more. I need people just to... And it's not... It needs to go to Parliament and they debate it properly. It's not my job to make the rules, but it's my job to put that in front of somebody and say, this is not right. And I can make that work. I just need some more people to sign.
No, not at all. Not at all. There will be some parents who are listening, Ellen, who were maybe those parents who during lockdown handed out the iPhones. And you go and sit in a coffee shop and you'll see a parent that just basically hands out the tablets left, right, and centre. What do you say to those parents who are almost a little bit maybe head in the sand and almost where they're thinking, well, I just presume or hope that my child is maybe doing the right thing because they don't understand the world in which the child is maybe operating, that they themselves don't quite want to look into it too much or don't quite want to ask those difficult questions as well. But I guess you would say to them, please engage with this so that if there is ever a time where you need that information, if there's ever a moment where you need to know more, that opportunity is there for you.
And I'm not a perfect parent. I've certainly, yes, I gave him a mobile phone. And yes, I've been... oh, just play that game for a minute, particularly when you're younger and you're trying to achieve something. I'm not the most amazing parent that, play with their child 24/7. We're parents, we've got jobs and, I've been running a company, it takes up your time. But I now know information is on there that I really wouldn't want him seeing. And I didn't know that before. And I think if there's a parent listening, have a scroll through his phone with your son or daughter and look at it yourself. If you don't want to take it off them and do it, I mean, when Jools was younger, we used to take his phone off at night, the minute he's gone to sleep, and scroll through like who said what, and we were looking at it. As they get older, you don't do that as much, and you think, well, actually, they're a bit more mature and they can cope. Well, I would be saying, if you don't want to take it off and look at it without your child knowing, get your child to sit there and look at TikTok with them for a while and see what images they're watching. And, the amount of porn that apparently is on there. And children, I mean, actually, we did catch him watching porn, and my Jules' dad sat down and had a conversation with him and said, what you're watching isn't real life. Statistically, something like under 9-year-olds are watching hard porn on their devices without the parents actually realising, and they're not even necessarily looking for it, it just appears. And God, I just look at their phone, just take a look with them, and just see if what they're watching is okay, because I wish I'd done it. And it may not be social media. I don't know that. So this has only just opened my eyes to how dangerous it is. And I'm not blaming TikTok. I'm not blaming Instagram yet. And if it is that, then I'll see where I go with it from there. But it might not be. But as a parent, we absolutely should have the right to see what they were looking at.
You'd encourage people to sign the petition as well. We'll put links to the petition in the article in the podcast notes as well, so people can join that as well. 2 more signatures while we've been speaking. This is pre-recorded as well. So there's very positive vibes that are emerging from this as people are coming around to it. And I'm noticing a big groundswell of people just thinking, hang on a minute, maybe this doesn't sound right. Maybe there is something that needs to sit. And I think there almost is that gut reaction that parents will have to this campaign, Ellen. Well, I think, actually, yeah, ultimately, I do want to trust my child in terms of letting them have that life. But also, if I do have questions, I should have the right to be able to ask them and have them answered in the same way that I do if something happens at school, or if something happens in football, if something happens in scouts, or whatever that would be.
If a child died with an illness, you'd do a post-mortem to work out what happened. And I'm just left for the rest of my life otherwise thinking, well, what the hell happened? What I don't understand. And there could be something that would give me some answers. I mean, who knows? Maybe he was massively depressed that every single person under the sun missed. There was not one teacher thought he was depressed, or, his friends didn't raise any concerns. So maybe he was Googling depression. I don't know. I just want to know what it was. And that's the only thing I've got to try, is I don't have any other option to try. There wasn't a note. So I've got to try it. And for children alive, there are children that have died, and it's been proven that it was social media. And again, the parents, didn't know what they were looking at. And it's been proven that they were looking at, in some cases, thousands of harmful images that encourage self-harming or ending your life. Well, that could save some child's life. And getting a bit emotional, but if we could try and save one child's life, that's all I want to do is make a difference to the children that are still here, because I can't change it for Jules, but I could, by doing this, make a difference for other children. Sorry, it's quite difficult to hold it together.
Not at all. Do not apologise. Not at all. Thank you so much, Ellen. We'll do our best to raise as much awareness as the petition by sharing that within these sort of spaces where parents will hopefully hear it.
You see, I'm using social media, but in a positive way. Hopefully, I have shared it on Facebook, Instagram, and in fact, if you just type in hashtag Jools Law, JOOLS Law, which we actually laughed at, because Jules would laugh at that because it looks a bit like coleslaw. And I said, Jules would be giggling, going, Mum, what have you done? But it's all over social media, and I just need as many people to sign it as possible. Let's try and make a difference and protect our children.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.